everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brianna Wagner. I'm the communications manager at Lawyer One. And today I am very fortunate to be joined by Alex Barlow. He is a complex litigation attorney with Schrader and Associates based in Houston, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Bree.
Thanks. So I really would love to hear a little bit about your journey with litigation and kind of how you ended up representing on behalf of injury victims.
When I was a young man, I grew up in a small refinery town that had a lot of working class folks, most of my family were working class folks. And many of them ended up with occupational diseases, and some of them even died from it. So when I got to college and eventually law school, I felt like I wanted to do something to, honor those roots and honor those family members. And so I decided that I would represent folks who had been injured, and primarily people who've been injured through means that are require a lot of scientific study and background to understand. And a lot of that, at first, that involved a lot of folks with occupational diseases like asbestos-related diseases, mesothelioma, various forms of cancer that you can get from benzene and other toxic exposures. And eventually that grew into me getting involved in cases involving pharmaceuticals and medical devices, because there are just so many injuries that occur from faulty medical devices or from not adequately studied pharmaceuticals that have been put on the market. And a lot of times the cause of these injuries is non-obvious to people, because obviously it requires a lot of scientific understanding to know what can cause these diseases or injuries. And so my practice evolved in that direction as well. I still represent the folks with cancer and occupational diseases, but I've expanded it for many years to include folks injured by faulty drugs.
So I guess that brings me to something that I'm sure you're very familiar with, and that is Elmiron. It is a manufactured medication by Janssen Pharmaceuticals. What is it, and who is it typically prescribed to? So
Elmiron is a drug that has been marketed since, I believe, the mid to late 1990s. And it is a drug that was intended to or does treat interstitial cystitis. And it is to varying degrees effective in treating interstitial cystitis. Interstitial cystitis is a painful condition that can develop in the bladder of women. And so interstitial cystitis is Elmiron was developed as a new treatment to treat that pain. And it's effective in some women, and other women it's not effective. As time has gone on, it has become clear to the public and to medical professionals that study these things that it also has some pretty serious side effects. The most serious of these side effects is that it can cause pigmentary maculopathy, which is a condition of the eye that is what we call a signature disease or signature condition, which means it's very tightly correlated with a certain cause. And pigmentary maculopathy is a signature disease of Elmiron exposure. In other words, taking Elmiron, particularly at the higher doses. And this is something that could have and should have been caught much earlier by Janssen, the manufacturer. But the studies that they used to get their FDA approval were relatively small, and they were also short-term. I think the longest was up to a year.
Wow.
And that's not very long for
Right.
a drug that people are going to take for years and years.
Yeah. So obviously that's grounds for a lawsuit when you're having irreversible retinal damage. Why do you think it is important for someone to seek an attorney when they are starting to have these symptoms?
Well, it's important because there can be this is a significant issue
Mm-hmm.
for people. It's important that they seek compensation because many of the folks who develop this condition are going to have significantly impaired eyesight
Mm-hmm.
probably for the remainder of their life. The treatment options, aside from stopping the Elmiron, are very limited, and there's evidence that suggests that even after you stop the Elmiron, that the condition may continue to progress. So this, obviously, losing your eyesight is a significant injury. It can significantly impact your ability to earn a living. It
Mm-hmm.
can significantly impact your ability to enjoy your life. It can significantly impact your ability to go about your activities of daily living in a safe manner, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, depending on how severe this gets for people, they're going to need, possibly, I guess, they're going to need assistance in how to live their life safely. They may need seeing eye dogs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all kinds of implements that they're going to need to be able to treat their decreased eyesight.
Mm-hmm. So when somebody begins seeking a lawsuit with Elmiron, typically how long does it take to reach a judgment of settlement?
Well, there haven't been any verdicts yet.
Mm-hmm.
The litigation is in its early stages,
Okay.
and so we can't speak specifically to Elmiron. I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you from my experience generally in pharmaceutical litigation that it can take many years. On the short end, 3 years, but I've been involved in litigation that's gone up to a decade.
Oh my
So
goodness.
people need to be prepared for a long fight. Usually it does not go that long,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a number of years to get these things resolved because these are powerful companies. Janssen is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
one of the largest manufacturers of pharmaceuticals in the world. And they have incredible resources that they can bring to bear to defend these cases, even when there's a clear wrongdoing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's important to obviously get the right attorneys involved that have the resources to take on a company like Janssen or Johnson & Johnson.
And this is more of, you would say, like a mass tort case, or what kind of case would this be considered?
It is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
every case, it would be considered a mass tort case.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, all of my clients have individual representation. They have their individual cases. I don't file class actions.
Okay.
I try to bring my cases with as an individual case. Oftentimes they end up consolidated into one court. That has not happened yet in Elmiron, but we're prepared to pursue these cases in the individual courts around the country, or if they're consolidated. We have a great deal of experience in dealing with what they call federal MDL courts, which are courts that consolidate a large number of claims.
Mm-hmm. And as far as pursuing something with Elmiron in a case, what would be the statute of limitations
It
on?
varies by state.
Okay.
And so we can't, without talking to the individual person about the facts of their case, we can't
Mm-hmm.
make a blanket statement about when the statute of limitations will have passed for them.
Mm-hmm.
What I tell people who think they may have a claim, that they should consult an attorney as soon as possible, because some states have a statute of limitations as short as 1 year. Some are 2, some are 3. and there's a very few that have longer statutes of limitations, and there are a number of factors that can affect when that statute of limitations begins to run. But all of that is very case and state specific.
Okay, so when somebody is starting to seek an attorney, what kind of questions do you recommend they ask to find someone who would be qualified?
Well, they should ask how much experience they have in doing pharmaceutical litigation, right? Or at the very least, complex litigation involving diseases, right? They should make sure that they're comfortable with the responsiveness that they're going to get from the attorney. That they should make sure that they feel comfortable that that attorney is not just trying to sell them a bill of goods to sign them up. And they should ask the attorney if they are going to handle the case themselves. If they are intending to refer it to someone else, that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't retain that lawyer. But then I would ask some follow-up questions about, well, who do you intend to refer it to, right?
Right.
You should look for somebody who has experience in MDLs, somebody who has tried cases, and somebody who has a significant amount of resources so that they can, get out there and actually fight. Because Johnson & Johnson, Janssen can bring almost unlimited resources to the defense of their cases. And so you need somebody with substantial resources to be able to hire the experts, to take the depositions, to hire the additional attorneys if necessary, to meet that challenge that inevitably their case is going to face.
Yes, and if they are starting to have those symptoms while taking Elmiron, what materials do you recommend they bring in? What are things, documentation that they should save or things that they should notate when presenting a case?
Well, they should save any medical records that they have. Generally speaking, we're able to, after we're contacted, get the proper authorizations to go out and get the records, their medical records, to establish, what conditions they have going on. But if they, to the extent they already have records, they should save those for sure.
It's interesting because I noticed, I checked on the Janssen website, and now they have, in June 2020, I believe, they updated and had specified that, retinal damage is now a side effect. I'm interested to hear the people who were prescribed to this prior to that, do they still have grounds to file if now that Janssen does have, notation of the symptom?
Of course, yes. That Janssen has now attempted to, at least in part, correct their labeling of warnings on the drug. Only shows that the case has more merit, or at least merits more investigation, because obviously, before 2020, doctors prescribing this medication and patients themselves would not have had access to nearly as much information about this potential risk.
So when somebody is, filing and they're going through a lawsuit, what kind of compensation are you referring to if they were to win, or what are you seeking when you're filing?
Well, the only thing that the law allows us to seek is monetary compensation. And these are significant cases, and
right.
Depending on how the facts develop over the next several years of discovery, the recoveries could be substantial.
What do you think would take to pull a drug like this? Would it take a certain percentage of people, or is there ever an end in sight of being able to pull this off the market?
Well, that is a regulatory issue as opposed to a civil litigation issue. usually those things operate independently for the most part. I will say one of the reasons that it's important to bring these cases is that as we develop evidence, as we get discoveries, sometimes we discover things, oftentimes we discover things that the FDA, which is the Federal Food and Drug Administration that regulates drugs, that they did not have access to. And it also calls attention to issues people are having, so that sometimes the FDA will go back and take a second look at a drug. So it does sometimes bring new evidence to light to bring these cases that sometimes does result in either a change in the warnings, change in the prescribing instructions, the contraindications, or the circumstances under which a drug will be prescribed. And then other times, depending on how severe the injuries are and how significant the evidence we're able to develop is, sometimes the FDA will take a look at that and take a look at the other evidence that they're able to get through their means, and they may even cause the drug or order the drug to be pulled. That's unusual that the FDA actually orders a drug that's on the market to be pulled. Generally, if things begin to look like that's going to happen, the manufacturer, in my opinion, to save themselves the embarrassment of having their drug ordered off the market, will pull it themselves.
Okay,
and I've seen that happen in my cases before.
Oh, wow. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing that with us. If you or a loved one is taking Elmiron and experiencing negative side effects such as an impact on vision, you may have grounds for a lawsuit. So please contact a qualified Elmiron attorney as soon as possible. Thank you so much.